you construction enthusiasts and visionary thinkers, are you ready to witness a game-changing revelation in the world of building? Today, we dive into an exclusive conversation with none other than Justin Stewart, the mastermind behind Synergy Modular. From accelerating project timelines to enhancing quality, this is the future you've been waiting for, so stay tuned. Innovation is about to meet construction excellence right after this word from our sponsors. Stream Modular, the only logistics company you need to transport your mods, pods, and panels. Our friends at Stream Modular are investing $50 million over the next 25 years to build the technology, solutions, and trailers needed to handle and transport the projects of today and meet the demands of tomorrow. Reach out to their team at streammodular.com to discuss your next project. CombiLift is the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers, a leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design service. CombiLift helps companies of all sizes and from every industry maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of their warehouse and storage facilities. A big thank you to Paul Short and the team at CombiLift for helping us all to build it better. Visit them at combilift.com. Brave Control Solutions, where offsite manufacturing systems that do more than just improve productivity. They have a unique approach to industrialized construction, a lineup of flexible automation systems specifically designed for the construction industry, empowered by CAD to Fab, and turnkey solutions for 3D volumetric assembly, structural insulated panels, finished wall assemblies, MEP component processing, assembly, kitting, and storage. Learn more at thinkbrave.com. All right. Welcome, everybody. It has been great traveling all through Europe. We are back in the studio, and I am super excited to bring Justin Stewart, the CEO and owner of eight-time National Excellence in Construction Award-winning Synergy Inc. and industry-disrupting Synergy Modular, to the show. So let's give a big round of applause for Justin. Hey, Justin, how are you, man?
Doing great, Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Well, listen, we appreciate you taking some time to be on the show. You have been on the Dave Cooper Live radar for some time to have you on. So this is a real honor, and I'm super excited to talk about everything that you have going on at Synergy Modular. But first, let's learn a little bit about who Justin is. So why don't you take a few moments, give everybody your background, because we want to know everything about you, Justin, from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we will call your family members, and then it'll get embarrassing if we bring them on the show. However, you only have about a minute and a half to do it. The show floor is yours.
Oh, man. I thought I had at least a couple hours to get into this. Okay. Well, so Synergy Inc. was founded by my parents about 33 years ago. I was about 8 years old, almost 9. So I actually went to work for an outside GC by the time I was 12. So in a weird way, you could say I have about 30 years. If I was going on LinkedIn, I would say I have 30 years of industry experience. We've built affordable housing for all of those 33 years. We've built every type of commercial project you can imagine, from industrial to healthcare to office space, banks, educational, but always a ton of affordable housing. It's core to our mission. And that's actually what drove us right into modular. The construction industry, as a lot of people know, it picked up at different paces coming out of the Great Recession around the industry. But we were headquartered up in the Seattle area, where it was a blip. By 2011, 2012, costs were escalating rapidly up there. So by 2015, we were facing a scenario. I tell this story, and I kind of get into where I was and what it felt like. But we were facing a scenario where every one of our affordable housing projects, they'd go for their funding awards months prior, and by the time, just in that time between getting awarded their funding And the time it was time to break ground, costs would escalate another 5 to 10%. And every project was faced with a budget challenge, let alone a schedule challenge once they got underway with labor shortages. So it just hit home hard on one particular affordable housing project. It was a project that it was for Catholic Housing Services, and we were about to get started on this project, and I can still remember the call. It was costs are too high. Don't know where the additional funds are coming from. Project's on hold till we figure it out. And that always hurts as a GC. But in this case, this was a project for homeless veterans. Every day that project didn't start, those veterans would be sleeping on the street. And didn't know how we were going to solve it, but I can tell you what, we made a commitment big time that day to go figure out whatever it was going to take to bring predictability back to this process and be able to deliver on the promises we were making. That led us down a path of trying every different technological innovation you can imagine, from software to process to different building types. And the only one that really could move the needle, especially when it came to predictability, was Offsite and volumetric modular. From that, it took us down a deep journey, a couple of years of traveling to every offsite project we could find. Got a lot of help. We're very grateful for the help along the way from everybody that was currently building in the industry, from offsite suppliers to developers who were out there trying their first projects, to GCs who were trying their first projects. They were willing to sit down, open up, and share lessons learned and all the pain. From there, we started Synergy Modular.
And so it was born, right? There you have it. So
there it was. That's the origin story.
What I love about it is, right, these things come out of, pain. And unfortunately, that's sometimes how we learn, and how that it's also how we find better ways of doing things as well. And what I really love about your story, when we covered another company over in England called British Offsite a few months ago, and it was a very similar story where it's generational family, and the son came and started British Offsite. Weston Homes is a big home builder. It's kind of like the KB Homes, I guess, of United States here. So, and that's kind of where the innovation, and it took a similar path, Justin. So I love this, where it went from a concept to actual applications and being built. So well done. I love it.
Thank you. I'm excited for this conversation, Dave, because, there was not a lot of prep time. So this conversation can go wherever you want. I'm an open book.
Awesome. So let's talk about our last trip to Vegas then. No. Well, sweet. Hey, listen. All right, so let's kind of talk about Synergy. Who are the customers? Like, how do you? Let's start with who the customers are, because you're a general contractor. You're not a manufacturer. But let's talk about, why do people reach out to Synergy? Who are they, and what are you guys doing for them?
So, just like you said, we're a general contractor. So the customer is the typical customer of a general contractor. It's every developer out there. Actually, a lot of our inbound calls are from our referrals from modular suppliers at this point, as well as architects. Our whole approach, and this, I can go into the details of this, but it was to integrate the different disciplines into aligned incentives, open communication, building trust, and helping modular suppliers, architects, and developers all be more successful. And so our typical client is a developer. It's a developer. They've got a piece of land, they've got an idea, and we help them execute.
And what would you say is the sweet spot, if you have one, for the types of projects you love to do?
Well, affordable housing, as I mentioned, is core to our mission. I'm on a personal mission to help solve the affordable housing crisis. Modular and offsite, and being the best modular offsite GC, is a big part of that. It's not the whole strategy there. There's much more that goes into how to leverage that into flipping the development model on its head. But that is a huge key. So affordable housing is core to what we do. It's always been about 50% of our total revenue, and will continue to be at least that going forward. Other than that, as far as the modular side, anything multi-unit, hotels, student housing, senior housing, apartments, are all great candidates for bringing predictability and obviously schedule savings back into the equation.
Now, are you using wood, steel, or is it a mix of both?
Both.
Construction.
Yeah, kind of unique. We were looking at this. Actually, we just broke ground on our 9th larger scale volumetric modular project, and more than half of them have been steel, which is kind of interesting. Um, it,
Yeah.
we did 3 projects with Z Modular right off the bat. Our first project was wood, but then we did 3 with Z as they were getting that off the ground and up and going. And so that kind of tips the scales a little bit, but we continue to use steel and wood. So, and have both steel and wood projects in the pipeline right now.
And I love it. And we're going to get into how you work with these modular manufacturers, because one of the things that has blown my mind in our pre-interview to having this live conversation was how many modular manufacturers you're working with. And I'm sure there's ups and downs and lessons learned, and we're going to get into some of that later in the show. So if that's what has your interest, stick around, because we'll be talking about those things as well. But you've also been spending a lot of your time traveling the world. Maybe we cross paths in the air sometime this past trip to Europe. But why don't you tell us about where you were visiting over in Europe, why you were there, and then maybe we can get into some things that you may have learned that you'd like to bring back here to the United States.
Absolutely. Yeah, most recently, so the good folks at ModX were gracious enough to include me in their most recent effort on behalf of HUD to develop the offsite roadmap, if you will, for attacking our housing crisis that the nation is facing. As part of their program, that involved trips to Scotland and England, to Tokyo and the surrounding areas, and then Sweden. And so that was December, March, and June were those 3 trips. Pretty remarkable. HUD was in attendance on all 3 trips, along with some of the big hitters in the industry. Obviously, ModX was there, and they did a heck of a job organizing about as much information as possible. And then the industry partners internationally, I couldn't even describe this. I mean, we're talking months of work that went into these visits and these presentations, and the amount of information is just really staggering.
Yeah, it is. And when you went over there, what was your goal? You know, as a general contractor, you don't own a manufacturing facility. You're going to visit these manufacturing facilities. You're in the affordable housing market, and that's kind of where you really want to make big change and big impact. So you get lucky. You're a little bit lucky. You're riding around with the guys from ModX, right? I love Ivan and Ryan. If you don't know them, you should. They're a lot of fun to boot. But you're also out there with HUD. What was the goal of this trip for
Goal
you?
of these trips for obviously for the group is to evaluate, especially the regulatory environments of these foreign countries and what has allowed the industries to flourish with those regulatory environments. From my perspective, I say this all the time, I'm an evangelist for the industry, but on a mission to solve the affordable housing crisis, we need regulatory advancement here in the United States. So that was a huge part of the why I went there, was to bring an industry perspective. So they weren't just getting an academic and a government perspective into evaluating what was happening overseas and thinking that it could just work in the United States. It was bringing some real life case studies and challenges that we face over here and weighing those against what we were hearing to see what were viable options, and just add as much as I could to that conversation.
Was there anything in particular that you went, wow?
There was a lot of wow, actually.
Yeah, there
I
is.
think wow is the most commonly used word over there.
Yeah.
I mean, one that stands out, and this one, would stand out for anybody in the industry, was we were in Tokyo, and the level of presentation that those companies put together was over the top, incredible. The level of professionalism within their companies was incredible. The one that really stands out was getting an in-depth tour of Sekisui House, in which they build completely custom, all steel, but they do it in a way with a catalog of product of individual parts that they create into assemblies. They're able to take, if you're wanting a custom home, for example, you could walk into a showroom, pick out all of your finishes, your layout, within a month, they will have the house set on a foundation. And within a month after that, you're living in it. And to do that in their factory, they're putting out a box every 3.5 minutes. And we got to see that in real time.
All right, let that sink in for all of you that are out there right now. A box put out the door every 3.5 minutes, where we were talking before the show, and everybody else is trying to maybe get three, a week, let alone a day, right? So I think that's really, really impressive. Let's, my guess is you gone over there, and as you started Synergy Modular, I'm sure there was some, lessons learned, some early fails that you had. And then once we talk a little bit about that, let's get into the process of working with other manufacturers. But did you have some early fails in the beginning of what you were setting out to achieve?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of where we started, is we tried to collect everybody else's fails and get them to open up and try to avoid as many as we could. But, getting into something this different, it's somewhat unavoidable. And that's where a lot of people try to keep cramming a round peg into a square hole, and they keep trying to just make the development process as similar as site-built construction. When we did our first volumetric modular project, it was a 50-unit affordable housing project north of Seattle. We were working with Gurdon, obviously a very experienced team over there. The project had followed kind of a roller coaster path, as a lot of affordable housing projects do. It's the one top right there. That's a little close-up of it. That was our first one, Twin Lakes Landing. Overall, the project was generally successful in that it was built about par for site-built costs. It was certainly a couple months faster than site-built would have been. You can see the water table on that site was about 18 inches below the foundation, or the finished floor. So we were installing utilities in the water. So we had active sump pumps the entire time to drain it out, install utilities, and then let it fill back in. Anyway, it was that project that really cut our teeth, going through and understanding the level of integration required between us and the modular supplier. We knew that we needed a really tight integration there. What we didn't know was that we needed to actually integrate into their procurement process, their internal shop drawing process, aligning that with our shop drawing and submittal process, and aligning them at the same time. At that point in time, no contracts were created that would even allow that. We couldn't get our subs under contract until we were under contract. We're not under contract until we're ready to break ground. It's just the function of development finance. Well, our subs aren't going to start their submittals until they're under contract. So that actually birthed Synergy Modular. At that point in time, we built that project under the parent company, and it was a different way of building, but it was the same team. And we looked at it and said, the only way to do this well is either never do it again, or go all in, which means completely change everything that we did to get here. And obviously, you see what we did. We went all in. We completely threw the old order of operations out the window. We actually had to create new contracts for all of our subs, for our developers, for the design teams, to allow that early integration, so that we're doing that process at the same time as the modular supplier.
All right. There's so much to unpack here. So when I really think about, as a general contractor, there's a lot of moving parts. As a general contractor, you have all your partners, the electricians, the MEPs, plumbers, you name it, excavators, municipalities, codes, all this stuff that happens. And you guys are building all over the place. But you're not just working with one modular manufacturer. You are working with several modular manufacturers. Now, for most of us in this industry, we know that can be really hard because everybody speaks a different language. There is not one common term for anything between modular manufacturers. What was your biggest lesson learned, and how did you get a grip on that with so many moving parts? And how did you get a team of people? And when I say the team, that's pretty much all the stakeholders in the project on the same page in real time, because that is the key to your success. Yes?
Absolutely. Trust. It completely comes down to trust. And it's getting in and truly understanding business models, but to then let people understand how with that alignment, we have an alignment of incentive, but we also have an alignment of workflow. We have an alignment of an end goal. We want offsite suppliers to build as much of the building as possible, as much of the building as efficiently possible, I should say. But even beyond that, aligning our procurement efforts, we might want them using their early procurement to procure all of the project's electrical, for example, work through one electrical distributor and supply house to coordinate everything. We want it's a level of integration as we are one team. And then them understanding we're going to stand behind this project, well, for the next 50 years. A warranty's 1 year, but I've gotten calls on projects where a window is leaking 25 years later. When we went out there, found out it wasn't even the same window we had installed, but we still took care of it. I mean, we're going to be there behind this project forever. So we need to have a level of trust that they're building everything the way that we'd want it built. At the same time, they need a level of trust to understand we're never trying to undermine them. We're not trying to play a finger pointing game. It's actually, no, let's be as transparent as possible, dive into the process so that we know that that coordination is happening and the end product is what's designed.
Yeah. And let's talk about the client here a little bit. Synergy was not known as Synergy Modular. And I know you have repeat clients, that you work with, or repeat partners, I should say. How did you get them to start buying into the adoption of industrialized construction, modular construction? Was it a hard sale? Was it an easy sale? Like, walk us through how you did that.
For most of them, it's pain. I mean, it's the same reason most people get into modular. It's pain. They're experiencing cost overruns, schedule overruns, in the traditional site built environment with the labor shortages that are out there, all the supply chain issues that have been more recent. A typical site developed project doesn't allow for really warehousing and stockpiling materials, but in a lot of the projects we build, because we still build just as much site build as we do modular, there's zero laydown. Everything is just in time delivery. It's hundreds of just in time deliveries. And one little hiccup on a just-in-time delivery and you're affecting the schedule of an entire project. Modular is a completely different animal in that it is warehousing. It is able to go out for early procurement, early storage materials, early submittal process, early RFI process, coordinating all of that, true digital twin, building the building digitally before you ever build it in real life. So for most of them, it was pain.
Yeah. Well, and that's really it, right? That's what caused you to go in this direction as well as the pain. Yep. Now, as the stakeholder of the project, the people that you're building these for as the general contractor, do they also have an inside look of what's happening? And are they part of this whole process?
So one of our core values is transparency. And it's not just a buzzword that we say. Transparency is truly how we integrate with suppliers, but also our developer clients and the design teams. At any point in time, they can see to the penny every dime spent on a project. They can see to the hour the work that's being scheduled. They can see absolutely anything and everything within a project.
Well, there you have it, right? Let's talk about the core values. I say this all the time, Justin, that the most successful companies, successful companies out there have an amazing culture, not only within their team and the organization, but with all their partners, and they grow together, but they also have amazing core values. And I love your core values, right? I mean, just starting off, doing the right thing. Well, doesn't that say a lot?
That one can kind of just stand on its own. You can almost just have that be the core value and get rid of everything else.
You could, right? But so we got doing the right thing, innovation, massive action. When you say massive action, what does that mean?
It means not stopping until it's done. And it means if you're going to try to do something, there are going to be roadblocks all along the way, and it's going to require 10 times more effort than you thought it was going to take to get it done. So it's not, I made a call, I left a voicemail, I sent an email. I did all of those, and then I called again, and then I drove to their office. And I didn't stop until it was done. It's massive action.
Right. You got personal development, transparency. We know all of that. And the last one is winning. Justin, what does winning look like to the team at Synergy?
So winning is a fun one to talk about because it's divisive. Some people look at it and they're like, winning? It sounds too competitive for me. And it's not about that at all. Yes, there's a competitive nature to it, but what it's about is that you could put forth 95% of the effort and it means zero. If you get something 95, 99% of the way, you may as well have done nothing. Unless you get it across the finish line, unless you get the project delivered on time, under budget, unless you get whatever that next step is, it's winning every single day. We actually have a meeting every morning where people discuss their wins. It's a little 10-minute meeting where everybody just rips off a series of wins from the day before. It's getting something from one step to the next step, and that's winning. If you get something almost to the next step, well, you didn't get it anywhere.
Somebody that is a general contractor, similar to your family, maybe a family run business, maybe not. What advice would you give them if they wanted to start using industrialized modular construction panel, any of it, right? A systems approach. What would be your biggest word of advice if they wanted to incorporate from being a traditional site builder to an offsite builder?
One, do it. You're going to need to. That's where the industry is going, and it's going to be picking up a lot of momentum here in the next couple of years. Two, the industry, it's not easy to go out and find a lot of resources of how to, but most people in the industry are really willing to share. Most of us are advocates for the industry. We're willing to share best practices, information, case studies, site visits, you name it. We'll be doing a modular setting event in Montana in just a few weeks. I think the first week of September. Come out, talk to the groups that are building it. The suppliers will be there. The setting companies will be there. The developers will be there. The design team will be there. People are willing to share. So come out, talk to people.
In this industry in particular, people would be very surprised when they call somebody up or run into them at an event and sit down and just start talking, because we all know, the people that have been in this for a long time all know that this industry is very small and we have a long way to go as far as growth and market share. And I think you're absolutely right. Just ask and you'd be surprised how many people will actually help you.
100%.
So industrialized construction in the future, is it growing? Are you seeing it growing? Are you seeing clients asking you for it?
It's absolutely growing. We get inbound traffic on a daily basis, people asking for it. It's growing leaps and bounds. And again, pain is the main driver. Now it's becoming necessity, not just pain. There isn't a labor force in some markets. The labor force that is in some markets isn't willing to participate.
Right.
It's become necessity. Beyond that, where the industry is getting to a level, I can't say a level of maturity, because as I think not with a straight face anyway, it's a very immature industry. As the industry matures and forms of contract are more universal, regulations can be more universal. We're building right now in Montana, Washington, California, Arizona, Texas, going into Nevada, Utah, and Colorado later this year. Every regulatory environment's different. Every building type's different. So as the industry matures and there becomes a little more commonality and universal approach, that will be like gasoline on the fire. It'll accelerate. Beyond that, Offsite is allowing things we talked about a little bit, where it's allowing a change of focus to the end use. Instead of just a focus on how cost effectively can I build more net rentable square feet, it's changing to, why don't I optimize the end use for the end user? And just by doing that, you made it manufacturable.
That's interesting. Say that one more time. By optimizing the use for the end user, you made it manufacturable?
Yeah. Best way I can put this is that housing is a perfect example. Housing, the people that live in an apartment building are not the customer. They're part of the product. When an apartment building is developed, get a market study that says there's a need for housing here. And if you build something even remotely up to par, you know it's going to rent. You know it's going to rent to 92 to 97% occupied. So you take those numbers and you run a pro forma. So what you're trying to do is maximize your net rentable square feet. So you come up with massing options that do that, run that maximum net rentable square feet against your costs, cost for entitlement, design and engineering, hard cost to build it, cost for ongoing management and maintenance, your investor hurdle rate. As long as you pay this or less for the land, project pencils. Nowhere in there are the people living in the building the customer. The investor hurdle rate was the customer. That was what you were solving for. You flip that on its head and you actually say, why are we building housing? It's a place for people to live. It's people's homes. Now you create better homes. You optimize floor plans. You optimize them for efficiency, for daylighting, for air quality, for the sustainability of the overall build. You optimize it for furniture layout and just general livability. And then you take those units and you aggregate them together into a building. The complete game changer to the development industry. More than anything, I could tell you exactly what you could build, how much it'll cost, and when it'll be done. And then you could create demand for it, and I could already finance it for you. That changes the industry a little bit.
Now, I don't know if I've heard anybody explain it in a better way. That was awesome. We could just end the show right now. I mean, that was it, right? That was
there it is.
But we got some comments and questions we'll go to in a moment. But finance, big topic in this industry, Justin. Big topic, right? Are you able to finance your projects without too much headache?
Everyone's different. If it's affordable housing, it's actually generally easier to finance than market rate. Market rate, every one of them, it's up to this point has been a unique adventure, depending on relationships between the developer and their lenders. Because there are certain lenders that it's just a hard no, and then they need to go build a new relationship with a new lender. There have been people that have popped up in the industry, 100% focused on just providing development finance to the offsite industry, which we're very grateful for. And they're making it easier. And I think you'll start to see some big strides in that as well.
Yeah. Is there any lenders you've worked with repeatedly in the past that you love and other people should probably use?
On the affordable side, JP Morgan Chase is actually fantastic. Their community lending side, they have financed a couple of different affordable housing projects that we've done modular that have been without a hitch. They've been great.
JP Morgan, right? Nobody would think of that name when it comes to lending for modular construction, at least not in my world that I've heard of yet. So that is great. Do you find, and does the people that are financing your projects find, the financial institutions, that modular is a better, more secure way to lend money for projects large scale?
Once they've done it a few times, yes. The first time they do it, it breaks underwriting rules, right? So when you're securitizing a development loan, it's all secured by real estate. And modular is not real estate until it's bolted to a foundation. It's just stored materials offsite. So it breaks rules. So a lender has to either completely rewrite their own development lending program, and some of the bigger national lenders can't. They're too heavily regulated. It could be seen as discriminatory lending practices if they make an exception to their underwriting rules for one project. So you end up seeing a lot of community lenders stepping up to develop these projects.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. We're almost out of time here. Justin, let's take a couple of questions from the audience and comments, and then we're going to wrap it up. So we'll quickly go to, hey, Joe Butler. He says, haven't seen much more heartfelt recently than that intro. Well, thank you. I love what I do, and I love this industry. All right. Stephen Hailstrom says, one question as a GC I have for him is how to contract with a modular supplier in a way that protects the GC from the design challenges created by modular company.
Interesting. In my experience, if we're working hand in hand with a modular supplier early on, I wouldn't necessarily consider there to be design challenges created by the modular company. The design challenges are typically if a project was designed for site built and then attempted to be converted to modular. If it started modular from the get-go and the modular company and or the consultants have strong modular design background, usually it goes off really well. But back to your question on contracting, we contract with the modular supplier. So we'll hold a main GC contract with the developer, and then we will directly contract with the modular supplier, still with a third party, pay if paid clause, because obviously they want to be secured by the overall development loan, not just our balance sheet. So they want to be secured by the overall project loan. So there's a third party pay if paid clause, but it's a pretty standard form of contracting, similar to a subcontract. Obviously, a lot more meat to it. We integrate the modular supplier their own agreement and all the terms. And with some of them, we modify that, negotiate it out. With others, it's just ours, and we integrate all of their terms into our agreement.
Excellent. Excellent. Steven, man, good to hear from you. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate that. All right, let's keep going. We got quite a few here. Mike Smith says, I love his term, an evangelist for the industry. That's how I've often viewed myself, as a huge proponent for proper, necessary, and viable types of building in the United States. We have room to advance, and it's opportunities like this that have been taken by Justin that'll help this country back on its housing, back on its feet, is basically what he's saying. What do you think of that comment?
I love it. I love it. Again, back to a personal mission to solve the affordable housing crisis. I hope that we can be a big part of getting the country back on its housing feet. I also think what I alluded to earlier could be a pretty monumental change in the development process, which will go a long way in helping that. If it's a consumer-driven demand for housing and a consumer-driven demand for better housing products and options, that's when capitalism and an industry rises up to meet those demands and brings costs. You don't change an industry. I say this all the time. You don't change an industry by making it incrementally better. That happens all the time. That's just to stay alive in an industry. You make incremental improvements. You disrupt an industry by making a product that's twice as good for half the cost. And that's where the industry has to go.
Perfect. Thank you for that. All right, Mike, thank you. Brian Lignum, how are you, man? Long time, I think, since I've seen you. Love it. Incredible job, Justin. Keep up the good work. Appreciate you promoting the industry. Regards, Brian Lignum, Synergy Steel. I don't know how I didn't say that.
Good name. Strong name.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Good to see those folks for sure. All right. Henry Mickelberg in the house. I'm seeing HUD going on world tours. I'm seeing $5 billion of affordable housing grants. What I don't see is HUD as the overall client, designing typologies and specifying modular solutions for licensed manufacturing, which is the solution for clarity. Thoughts?
So, taking one step back. So first, it's helpful to understand what HUD's role is right now in our housing. And largely, they're an insurer for the lenders. So they step up and they insure a loan, which then allows the lender to go lend on affordable housing. And they insure it based upon some different subsidies and whatnot for the rental protection. But really, they don't lend money. They don't necessarily develop projects. Developers develop projects and banks lend the money. What we're seeing right now is a willingness from HUD and the overall federal government and as a whole to look at that role and say, what can we do from a regulatory standpoint that might enable the industry to further this? They, so much as in our last trip, talked specifically about evaluating the HUD code from Operation Breakthrough to see if there was a way to expand that into commercial and a better commercial code. Specifically, and this is going to geek out a little bit, but looking at a performance-based code versus the prescriptive code that the IBC and the IRC currently are. So I would say have hope. There are some pretty intelligent and forward-looking conversations happening. And more than anything, it's a willingness, and it's great to see. I will say I have a lot of hope coming from those.
Excellent. Henry, Good to see you. Hope all is well on the other side of the pond. He's over in France. All right.
All right.
Great job, Dave Cooper Live. Just how many people do you need on staff to do your offsite side of the business? And for those of you who don't know Greg Ugadi, he is the past chair of the National Association of Home Builders, the guy that updates the Secretary of Housing and the President of the United States several times a year.
All right. So taking this question on a project-specific basis, as a GC, it's actually pretty similar to a site-built GC team. So we're going to have our project management side, our estimating side, of course, but then we operate with fly-in teams that are 100% devoted to one project. Since we can build a project in half the time, they don't need to be working on more than one project. We'll have fly-in teams of always a super and an assistant, whether that's a foreman or an assistant super, because we need two people out there on each side of a laser. We will also have a project engineer or field engineer on site, regardless of the project size. And then it scales up from there. We have a larger project in Sunnyvale, California right now that we have an entire site-built renovation going on at the same time as a modular tower. So that we have 20 plus people out there. But it's pretty similar from a GC standpoint. What's very different is from a trade standpoint. If I'm site building a 200 unit apartment building, I'm going to be looking for 35 to 40 electricians out there during a rough-in phase. If I'm doing that same building using volumetric modular, I need about 5, maybe 4, because all they're doing is pulling feeders. And I just need people that know what they're doing, and I need a lot fewer of them. It's a much bigger difference on the trade side.
Awesome.
On the modular side, one other smaller element to bring into that, we actually self-perform maybe more on the modular side, because we'll have jack of all trades that can do any seaming work, flooring, trim, drywall, paint, that can roll through and do any of that work alongside the modular supplier and the setting company. Where on a larger scale site project, it's mostly all going to be sub.
Perfect. Great. Hope that answered your question there, Mr. Greg Ugaldi. Thank you for joining us today, wherever you are in the world. All right. This is going to be the last comment and question. We're running out of time here. Stephen Hellstrom, twice as good at half the price. Exactly right. But is anyone of the current players up to it? If you see anyone, who?
I don't know that I can name names, but I will say there are some pretty amazing projects being worked on right now. When I say project, I mean overall initiatives within companies to deliver exactly that. Much higher quality product at half the cost and get it all the way out to the market. And that's where the industry has to go. But it starts with a productized approach, a better consumer-driven approach to the industry.
Justin, it has been amazing having you on today. I really, really do appreciate it. Is there anything that I missed? Is there any last words, any pieces of advice you'd like to leave with the audience before we wrap it up here?
Integrate early. So an integrated design build approach really is the way to deliver a modular project cost effectively and predictably. That means build the trust amongst the team, between the developer, the design team, the GC, the offsite supplier, all the consultants, of course, the jurisdiction, but build that trust early and have an integrated design build approach. You focus on the end use. From that, people will bring solutions forward. Assemble that, and you'll have a level of predictability that does not exist in the site built environment right now. Integrated design build approach early.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate you being on the show today. Don't go anywhere. We'll come back to you after the outro. And for the rest of you out there, man, it's great to be back. But I am heading on the road again. I got to be in Manhattan tomorrow. But don't worry. You'll see me somewhere out there running around. Outside of that, everybody have a wonderful afternoon. And guess what? It's Monday. That means you got 4.5 more days to keep building it better. It's just the start of the week. Let's get to it. Justin, thanks for joining us today. The rest of you, we'll see you soon. Bye now. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.